Hello, and welcome to the first episode of An Injustice for All MMA. This will be like an audio podcast thing where I discuss MMA decisions. Obviously, the name is based off of the movie An Injustice for All, or An Justice for All. I don't know what to say. I like MMA a lot, and I wanted to find a way to talk about it without getting into the politics or the promo of the sport. I wanted to cover something that I don't think enough people in the MMA media talk about, which is decisions. Right? Decisions are probably the more boring aspect of the sport. I think the more fun aspects of the sport is probably finishes, right? Everyone wants finishes. Call outs, who the fighter is, things like that. That's the more glitzier part. Obviously I'm not a ref. I'm just some random fan who notices that when people get robbed, I don't like to say robbed. When people get terrible decisions, it just gets talked about once and it's gone. Now I'm not saying this is the forum where I say something and then everyone's gonna go, you know what, maybe we should look at this again. No, but I at least want to talk about it into a mic and flesh out my thoughts. Obviously, I'm going to say this again. I'm not a ref or I'm not a judge. So take this as like a fan perspective on decisions, right? So basically every week I'm going to come here and before I come here, I'm going to give out the scorecards. So I'm going to give out every single scorecard, and I'm going to have my own scorecard. And obviously, this is going to be based on how the judges scored it, but my scorecard is probably going to be a little different, maybe the same as the judges' scorecards. But I'm going to discuss why my scorecard is different from their scorecard, and I'm only going to be focusing on the individual rounds. So if a fighter subs someone or TKOs someone, I won't be discussing the finish or anything like that. Just the individual round that was scored. Okay. Now, how this forum is going to go is I'm going to discuss only the fights, only the rounds of the fights that I disagreed wholeheartedly with the judges. All right, and then I'll later have honorable mentions for fights I scored just like the judges, but I disagreed on the round placement. I think there's a lot of that in MMA where I think most of the fans or individual people agree with the judges on the overall result, but their placement of what round was won is where things get a little weird. I'm not sure if they know who won, but they just put the numbers in wrong, or they genuinely thought that certain fighters won that round when they didn't win that round. A good example would be the fifth round of Figgy versus Moreno, where one judge had Moreno winning the fifth round, even though it was obvious that he didn't win the fifth round. And there's many examples of where judges just have a different, are just moving different. So we'll start off with the first fight. So the first fight was Dustin Jacoby versus Maxim Grishin. And I believe this was a split decision. No, I'm sorry. This was a unanimous decision by Dustin, 29-28 on all judges' scorecards. Now, my scorecard read 28-28. I had this as a draw with Grishin winning the first, Jacoby winning the second, and a 9-9 in the last round. Now, again, tell me if you had it different, but what I saw in the third round was Grishin really was a really back and forth sort of, one punch would land for Grishin, then another punch would land for Jacoby, and back and forth and back and forth. Now, it's easy maybe in the end to say Grishin won because at the end they show the stats and we're not privy of that in the moment. So without looking at the stats, it's easy to say for me that it's a tie in the end. But the judges saw it a different way, and I just think that it was a draw in that fight, and I disagree with the judges. All right, on to the next fight. The next fight, this one had me a little miffed. This one was, I think, the biggest injustice of the night. Now, again, I could be wrong because I felt a little weird at the end. Again, I'm not going to get into the politics of what it sounds like on the commentary or what it doesn't sound like, but I'm just going to go based off of what I saw. And in the first round of De La Rosa versus Silva, I had a 10-9 in the first round. Now, that was before the point deduction. So I had a 10-9, and they minus the point deduction. It's a 10-8, right? And then in the second, I thought De La Rosa did enough in the end once she took her down and delivered some ground and pound to steal that round, which is why I gave her a 10-9 in that last round. Obviously, 100%, Silva won the last round. I gave her a 10-9. And in total, I believe I had 29-27. If I can read that correctly. Yeah, 29-27, De La Rosa. Now, the judges, on the other hand, went all over the place. So I'll read up what the judges had. And this just had me a little stunned. Derek clearly had it 28-28. So our scorecard, he agrees. I'm sorry. Derek Clearly and Eric Colon in the second agree with me that it's 10-9. And Saul D'Amato. So they saw what I saw in that second round. They gave it to De La Rosa. In the first, apparently they didn't see enough. And they were going, or actually, they marked out the 10, so they thought that Silva was winning that first round. I didn't see that, but they gave her, it's a 9-9. And then that final round is obviously Silva. With Eric Colon, who, has been a bit shifty on some of these scorecards, gave a 10-8 to Silva. I'm a little shocked at that, but it is what it is. All right, that's all I had for the fights that I had a big problem with. Now we're gonna go to the fights that I scored the same way as them. It was just we just had maybe a different look on the scorecards, probably. This fight was Davis versus Mazo. Now, this fight is interesting because in that first round, there was a lot of talk about how it reflected or how it looked like the Kunitskaya versus Vieira fight. And to me, it's just not the same thing. And it's not the same thing because in that first, they were essentially saying on commentary that that whole theme of that fight reflected that first round. And the reason why that's not true, in my opinion, is in the Kunitskaya versus Vieira fight, after Kunitskaya gets dominated in the first round, not dominated, after she gets 10-9'd in the first round, in the second, she reverses position and she takes over, winning the second round clearly. In the third, she gets taken down, but she's the only one doing action. She's the only one hitting. While Vieira is searching for subs the entire time, which, quite frankly isn't an action, searching for subs, she's just getting beat. And the thing that really put her over is Kunitskaya eventually reversing position and blooding her up at the very end. That definitely was the cherry on top. That definitely finished it. But the reason why it's not the same thing as the Davis versus Mazo fight, first round, is because when Davis takes her down and I believe is not on top of her, but is also searching for a submission, Mazo isn't attacking. Mazo isn't active until maybe the third round is when she gets taken down and she's kind of looking for stuff. But I believe in the second is where Davis was actually going for ground and pound strikes. But in the first, she wasn't doing anything. Right? So obviously, Davis would win the round for that. Another thing that reminded me of was a fight also on the card. Was another fight on the card was Cachero versus Lawrence. Lawrence was all over him. It's kind of like the Kunitskaya fight in a sense. We keep referencing back to that point, but it's where he wasn't. There's no ground and pound, but the person on the bottom has to stay active if they want to stay in the fight. And Cachero wasn't doing anything on the ground. I mean, in a way, he was content. He wasn't content. He was just being so out-grappled that he wasn't attacking from the bottom. And that's what it looked like in that Mazo first round. So that was a first honorable mention. Second honorable mention is first round Hernandez versus Moises. I had Moises winning that fight. Oh, sorry, back to the Davis fight. I had Davis 30-26, and the judges had it. I believe the judges had it. One judge had it 30-26. The other two had it 30-27. So we're pretty close there. Next honorable mention is Hernandez versus Moises. I had Moises winning this 29-28. One judge had 29-28. The others had 30-27. So we're also close on there. The only part I disagree with probably the other two judges is the first round was a 10-9 for me. And for them, I believe they had a 10-9 for Moises. I had a 10-9 for Hernandez. And what I saw with Hernandez was pushing the pace. Hernandez was backing him up to the fence. He was the more active one. I think he had the most output. Obviously, that's just what I saw. I couldn't look at the stats, so if the stats show a different thing, then that's in hindsight. But based off of what I saw, I believe he was pushing the pace. He had the most pressure. He landed the more not clean shots, but more shots than Moises did in the first round, and that's why I gave him the 10-9 in the first. Next honorable mention is Caceres versus Croom. Obviously, I agreed with the judges here. I personally had 29-28. The judges, I believe, had 30-27, which was one judge had 30-26. No, two judges had 30-26 in the with two 10-8s in the third round. That's fine, but in the second round is where I have a bit of a problem. I really don't think that's a 10-8 for Caceres, or a 10-9 for Caceres. I think that's a 10-9 for Croom. I think Croom understood what happened in the first. He got rocked, and in the second he just went straight to wrestling, straight to pushing him, and I believe he took him down correct me if I'm wrong, please. And he just looked the more active in that round, and so I gave it to him. Another honorable mention is Munoz versus Rivera. Obviously, great fight, but Munoz winning the first 2 rounds 10-9. I had him winning 29-28. The judges had him winning, 2 judges had him winning 30-27. One had him 29-28. So one judge saw what I saw and that was Mike Bell, where Rivera had some moments in that third round. Obviously he had suffered a lot in the first 2 via leg kick, and in the third he just toughened it out, and it was obviously his. It was painfully obvious it was his round, and it sucks that 2 judges gave a 10-9 in the third for Munoz. It makes no sense. I mean, after a couple leg kicks in the third, I think Munoz stopped. He was taking heavy damage. Obviously not enough to where he was going to get knocked out and lose the fight, but it was obvious that Rivera had won. That should have been a 10-9 for Rivera on all judges' scorecard, in my opinion. And I believe that is it. Thank you for anyone who listens. Tell me if I missed anything. If you also have your own scorecard, also, say something. And I'll try and do these every week. Obviously, I always have a problem with judges' scorecards that I have. So every week maybe I'll have more and more reasons why someone lost a round or won a round, in my opinion. But thank you for listening.